Welcome to VeroScope's analysis of Officer Kelly Deaver, Part 2, where we'll be looking at the Sallyport footage and her explanation of her visit to the Commissioner's office. One of the interesting observations which we saw from yesterday when we were establishing her baseline is she is more than capable of answering in truthful yeses and truthful nos, although sometimes in her Alice in Wonderland way, in her topsy-turvy way, she does get them the wrong way round when she is deceptive. However, in saying that, her linguistics and her anxiety goes up once Alan Jackson managed to get her into the dispatch room and actually admitting that there were cameras and admitting that she could see what is on the cameras and admitting that there is a camera in a Sallyport and admitting that she could see what was on the camera in the Sallyport. Although whoever was with me watching part one, it was literally like drawing blood out of a stone just to get her to admit those things. Then, as we go on with today's analysis, we'll see the question, did you observe anything unusual now that we've got her to admit this? And she goes absolutely off the scale. Huge increase in the amount of words that are used, which are completely unnecessary. It's all word salad. A lot of it's gobbledygook. Huge amounts of deceptive markers, and quite an example, actually, of forensic linguistics. And then she then goes on her rant about being threatened with perjury unless she lies about telling the truth, which she told the FBI. So extremely strange. And a very good way, if this is your first time looking at forensic analysis, it's a very good way, it's a very good example, very good lesson. And why learn? Well, in life, if you're able to tell at work who's being deceptive to you, whether that's clients or suppliers or bosses or employees, huge advantage knowing who's deceptive, as in your personal life. And many other areas where understanding who's telling the truth and who isn't is of enormous value. So let's carry on with the actual, I think where we got to, oh, by the way, this is the key to the color markup systems. So if you have time, perhaps, if you're watching this again, you can pause the tape and take the time to really understand what's going on. If you're new to the trial, just very quickly, this is the person why we're here, Officer John O'Keefe, who was murdered at the age of 46 and was found on the front lawn of a fellow Boston cop. And this is Karen Reed, who was accused of his murder and found not guilty in trial one, but there was a retrial for various reasons I won't go into today, and was also found not guilty in trial two. And this is the police officer Deaver, who has recently resigned from the Boston police force. So let's have a look at what she says today.
Sometime I would say towards the later of my shift, but it was the middle of winter and dark out. So
clarification. How long?
So I don't know what that means.
If I'm going to make the assumption, then yes.
It show the footage from that one of the other Sallyport.
Right now?
I'm objecting.
So I'm going to see it side by side.
And here's where we left off yesterday.
One of the cameras, one of the monitors that you had access to back on January 29th did show the footage from, or did it show the footage from that one of the other Sallyport garage cameras?
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure, it was a little bit clunky on my part. Did one of the monitors that you looked at, that you had access to at the dispatch area, did it show the video footage or the video feed from the Sallyport garage?
So I already said I don't remember where in dispatch the screen with the cameras was. There was a camera in the Sallyport. So if I'm going to make the assumption, then yes, of course. But now that's an assumption.
I'm not asking you for an assumption. I'm asking you, did one of the feeds, now we're talking about the camera, the other side of the camera is the feed. Do you recall whether or not there was footage that you could see on a monitor in the dispatch area that showed the sally port?
I'm going to go with yes.
Okay.
Like clarification.
How long?
So, look, I don't know what that means. So what do you mean you're going to go with yes? Is your answer yes?
Yes.
Thank you. What time about did you take over the?
Okay, so highly unusual. Let's have a look at the actual analysis. So it starts off with Jackson asking about one of the cameras and did it show the footage from the Sallyport garage? And she asks it to be rephrased, and Jackson says, sure, it was a little bit clunky. Did one of the monitors that you looked at, that you had access to at the dispatch area, did it show the video footage or the video feed from the Sallyport garage? So he's re-establishing this. So, reason why, deceptive marker. Notice, by the way, for those who have seen part one, how entirely different this transcript is going to look as we've marked it up. Yesterday, when we were establishing baseline and most of the questions were safe for Officer Deborah to answer, we didn't really see much colour marking because she could very simply give yeses and nos for truthful answers. But as the pressure built and as Jackson entered areas where deception is necessary, we suddenly start to see, for those who have been watching the dozen or so videos on forensic linguistics and learning the skill as we go along, you'll start to see the patterns. And others have commented in the comments that once you see it, it's like hearing a French accent. Once you know, you know. And if you hear a French accent once and you hear it again, you know. So we're starting to see the pattern. I already said I don't remember. And another deceptive marker, we heard what she said, so we don't need to go through it exactly. And she says that 18-second pause about whether or not she saw anything on the feed. The whole courtroom's waiting for her answer. It's a yes or it's a no. So we're waiting it was painfully long, wasn't it? And then she says, I'm going to go with yes. Very strange linguistics. As she weighs up, shall I continue to lie? She doesn't continue to lie because Jackson in part one had drawn this blood out of the stone so methodically that if she says no here, all that would happen is Jackson would have to rewind and go through the whole thing again to drag her back to the monitor room and drag her back to the Sallyport camera. So she decides it's just going to be easier to say yes. I'm going to go with yes, in defeat, in effect. Okay. The judge says, excuse the transcript error, the judge says, so I don't know what that means. So what do you mean you're going to go with yes? Is your answer yes? Yes. Thank you, says Jackson. What time about did you take over the dispatch desk that morning? Immediately following the 911 call came in, slightly fractured linguistics. Would it have been 6-ish in the morning? Does that sound about right? I don't, sometime I would say, so here we have huge amounts of time gaps. I don't, sometime, again we have cognitive overload. I don't. Sometime I would say towards the latter of my shift. So the shift is hers, but it was the middle of winter and dark, excuse me, and dark out. So I don't know if it was 4, 5, or 6. So she won't be tied down to a timeline. We know in deception, the number one skill of the deceiver is to absolutely avoid, wherever possible, any kind of tie down to a timeline, because it's the number one area where a detective or an investigator can begin to pick apart the story. So when we see complete vagueness about time, we see deception. Jackson says, understood, but it was still dark out. Yes. Okay, so we have a semi timeline established. It was still dark out. Yes. So the question about the Sallyport monitors triggered that deflection of can you rephrase? She's being coached. If in trouble, ask for the question to be repeated. Say you don't fully understand the question. Ask, can you rephrase it, please? Ask, can you say that in another way? Well, you can't unless you're the judge. But essentially, she has a whole bunch of playing cards, which would be the same sort of thing. Buys you thinking time, and also gets a little bit more intelligence about what the questioner is really after. So when pressed, she produces the extraordinary hedge. I'm going to go with yes. She could have said yes or no. So we're seeing huge amounts of deception from the off of part 2. There is a law of economy in forensic linguistics, which is the brain will use the shortest answer possible when telling the truth. It knows all that it knows, but it will try and use the shortest answer because it doesn't need to give justification in truth telling. Okay, let's carry on with the video.
Dispatch desk that morning?
Immediately following when the 911 call came in.
Would have been 6-ish in the morning. Does that sound about right?
Sometime I would say towards the later of my shift, but it was the middle of winter and dark out, so I don't know if it was 4, 5, 6.
Understood. But it was still dark out.
Yes.
Once you took over the dispatch desk, did you stay there even past your normal shift ending to support the investigation that was ongoing?
Not to support the investigation, I was just on overtime.
Okay, so you stayed past your normal end time of your shift that day?
Yes, on overtime.
You stayed into the afternoon, correct?
I believe the shift ended at 3:45 p.m. for the Canton police.
But you stayed past your ending shift time, correct? I'm sorry, I'll rephrase it. Did you stay past your ending shift time?
For my regular shift, yes, because I was on overtime on the day shift.
Did you observe anything unusual that stood out in your mind that occurred, pardon me, in the Sallyport while you were on that shift?
So we've discussed this previously. I can't make that statement on the stand because I've been provided information released by the defense that it was not a memory, that it was a distorted memory. Therefore, I can't state it because at this point it would be a lie. I cannot make that statement that you're wanting me to make on the stand because I've advised that that would be a lie.
Ms. Dever, I've never asked you to make a statement one way or the other on the stand. I'm asking you an open-ended question.
Okay,
Let me ask
first
the question. Did you observe something in the Sallyport garage on January 29th, 2022 that you found unusual, that stuck out in your mind?
Given factual information that makes it so I know I did not, no.
So the answer is no.
Correct.
Do you remember being in?
Okay, quite incredible. Let's break that down. So once you took over the dispatch desk, did you stay there even past your normal shift, ending to support the investigation that was ongoing? Not to support the investigation. I was just minimizer on overtime. Okay, So you stayed past your normal end time of your shift that day. Yes, sensitivity on overtime. Unnecessary words, also sensitive. Sensitivity we mark in pink for repeated phrases. So there's something that is causing an increase in cognitive load, an increase in stress, an increase in sensitivity, and it's to do with how long she stays on her shift. You stayed into the afternoon, correct? Deva. I believe vagueness, deceptive marker in this case. The shift ended at 3:45 for the Canton police, which is a very clever and subtle way of not answering the question. Because this shift end at 3:45, she's not saying that she ended her shift then, but for someone who wasn't observant or didn't really know what they were asking, she might get away with this, and the average person might think that her shift ended at 3:45, and so therefore that's when she stopped working. So it's subtle and it's deceptive. But you stayed past your ending shift time, correct? Brennan's immediately in with an objection, probably because of form. Yes, the judge asks him to rephrase it. Did you stay past your ending shift time? Deva. So she owns the shift. For my regular shift, question mark, yes. So she questions the question, deceptive marker in its own right in this instance, answers, but then gives a because. So question the question, yes, because, deceptive pattern. For my regular shift, yes, because I was on overtime. Reason why, on the day shift. Shift being sensitive in the same sentence. So she is extremely worried about being pinned down to a timeline, and she's extremely worried about when she ended the shift. And she's also defensive in the reason why she stayed longer. It's not to support the investigation, which for her, because we know of her deception, and because we know she is using slight topsy-turvy linguistics, I suspect that in actual fact, the reason that she is staying is indeed to support the investigation. I mean, there's been a murder of a Boston cop on the lawn. Of course, all of the police might be staying overtime to help support the investigation. So again, we have deception. And it reveals sensitivity about her role. She emphasizes just on overtime, minimization. And the specific time, 3:45, becomes crucial. She stays for a long time past the incident. Yeah. And then we hear the big one. Did you observe anything unusual that stood out in your mind that occurred, pardon me, in the Sally Port while you were on that shift? Did you observe anything unusual? Let's see what she says. So, we've discussed this previously. And if you remember part one, we had very similar, didn't we, towards the end. I can't make that statement on the stand. Reason why, because I've been provided information. Passive language. She doesn't say by whom she's been provided information. So let's go carefully here. This is where we spend some time. I can't make that statement. The statement of, did you observe anything unusual? Which is actually a question. So she's telling us that she's made a statement to this question before. I can't make that statement on the stand. She's telling us she's made this statement before. Because I've been provided information released by the defense that it was not a memory, that it was a distorted memory. Okay, so she's accusing somebody from the defense has told her that her previous statement and the reason why she can't answer this question is because it was not a memory of hers, but rather it was a distorted memory. Therefore, I can't state it because, another reason why, at this point, it would be a lie. So she's saying at other points, it would be the truth. I cannot make that statement that you're wanting me to make on the stand because I've advised that that sensitivity would be a lie. What a statement. You could study this for years. Basically, she's saying that what was true is now a lie, and that even though she stated before the truth, she can't state the truth anymore because someone has advised her that her initial memory of the truth is not a memory and that it is in fact a distorted memory. Therefore, I can't state it. So this is the most extraordinary way of refusing to repeat the truth. Jackson says, Miss Dever, I've never asked you to make a statement one way or the other on the stand. I'm asking you an open-ended question. She says, okay, so prior to, and is about to go off, Jackson says, let me ask a question. Did you observe something in the Sallyport garage on January the 29th, 2022 that you found unusual, that stuck out in your mind? Because she's explained both to Jackson and to the FBI exactly what she saw previously. She says, given, but doesn't state by who, passive language, given factual information that makes it so, I know I did not know. Jackson attempts to clear this up. So the answer is no. Correct. Fascinating. This represents total linguistic collapse. It's a 71 word response to a simple yes or no question. Contains 5 becauses, therefores, and so's, and sensitivity markets, distorted memory, false memory, confusion. I cannot make that. I cannot make that statement. Oh, incidentally, it's worth knowing the difference between this and that. this being closer to you or closer to something, and that being far away. So if she'd said, I cannot make this statement, it would be less sensitive than I cannot make that statement. That shows that she's pushing it away at the unconscious level. Advised. So who advised her that it would be a lie? Yeah, here we go. Passive voice. Who provided the information? Yeah, it's linguistically tortured. That is right. Someone gave her facts that override her own memory, which probably explains why she's extremely sensitive about the timeline of the shift and the overtime and her start and finish times. Because if someone has altered the records to retroactively prove, inverted commas, that she couldn't have seen what she saw in the Sally Port because her shift had ended or she wasn't there. Perhaps I think that's what's been going on. Some kind of manufactured evidence that there is no way she could have seen what she saw. Yeah. So enormous sensitivity markers, the largest we've seen so far in the trial. Okay, let's go back and carry on.
Viewed on August 9th, 2023.
I do.
That was by a separate law enforcement agency, correct?
Yes.
2 separate law enforcement agents, is that right?
Yes.
And you were advised during the course of that interview on August 29th of something, correct?
Can you rephrase
I'm sorry,
that?
August 9th.
So what was I advised of? Can you rephrase that?
She uses her Uno
Were
cards.
you advised that lying to those officers would be a crime?
So it was a willing conversation. I've spoken with their legal team. Because of the fact I was providing factual information that showed a statement of mine was a false memory, it was not a lie. Therefore, I made it in good faith, and I retracted given information that it could not be accurate.
Ms. Dever, did you understand?
Okay, she's obviously practiced that in front of the mirror. Did you notice the tonality, speed, pitch, everything demonstrates practiced and rehearsed and coached? Let's break that down. Do you remember being interviewed on August the 9th? I do. That was by a separate law enforcement agency, correct? Yes, it was the FBI. 2 separate law enforcement agents, is that right? Yes. And you were advised during the course of that interview of something, correct? Can you rephrase that? Okay, so she pulls out her Uno reverse card. I'm sorry, August 9th. So what was I advised of? Question the question, deceptive marker. Again, pulls out another, can you rephrase that? Sure. So she's essentially buying, her mind is spinning from that previous example that we've all just seen. Her mind's spinning. She's buying extra cognitive time now to resettle, to get her mind back on track. Sure. Were you advised that lying to those 2 officers would be a crime? Here she says so. Deceptive marker, reason why. It was a willing conversation. And here is an interesting, so you don't need to say this if it was just a normal, if it was a willing conversation, you never say, oh, it was a willing conversation. This tells us that it wasn't. This tells us it was because of fear, because of enormous amounts of fear. It wasn't willing at all. So it was a willing conversation. I've spoken with their legal team because of the fact I was providing factual information that showed a statement of mine was a false memory. I've spoken, so she's spoken with the FBI legal team because of the fact that I was providing factual information that showed a statement of mine was a false memory. So who has provided her with the new memory? It was not a lie, therefore I made it in good faith. It was not a lie, therefore I made it in good faith. I made a lie. I made the truth. I made it. The statement. I made it in good faith and I retracted. Given information that it could not be accurate. Yeah, I can't really see how this makes any sense at all. It's just a complete load of deceptive waffle. Combined with the previous deceptive waffle, we can only conclude that it's one of the most highly deceptive couple of paragraphs we've ever seen. Miss Dever, did you understand my question? Yes, I did. Back to baseline. You threatened, so here she gives her prepared statement. You threatened to charge me with perjury during our phone call prior to the first trial if I didn't lie on the stand right now. And I suspect that there was an intimation that she has to tell the truth, but it's been turned into a threat of perjury unless she lies. How strange. I'm telling you, I did not see anything factually. Isn't this interesting? So she tells us that she did see something unfactually. And the new facts are that she's got false memories. I've been provided, again, passive voice, because she doesn't say by who. I've been provided evidence, not by a person, but by a timeline. A timeline she's extremely scared of, so it makes sense. The reason why she was absolutely almost in a refusal state to be pinned down to a timeline is because the timeline has now provided her with evidence that her memories are false, that the truth that she was telling the FBI is now a lie, and she did not see anything factually. So she saw a lot that's not factually. The poor lady in some senses, because she's obviously absolutely frightened out of her wits. She's been intimidated, and I would imagine threatened and bullied. And I would imagine with a little bit of carrot and stick, but in what amounts, I don't know. But she's terrified. Okay. Miss Dever, my question was this. Were you advised that it was a crime to lie to those law enforcement agents? Yes or no? No. So she's able to use single answers, unusually, because yesterday her single answers were truthful as a baseline, but she is able to break that pattern. They never told you, they never admonished you that it would be a crime to lie to them. Objection from the prosecution, sustained as to form, Mr. Jackson. Sure. Did they advise you anything? Any consequence of lying to them? So, we had a willing conversation. I imagine this is a transcript error and he asks yes or no, and she says, I don't recall. So she begins to not answer the question. Jackson is not having it. She says, I don't recall. The judge, very strangely, says, okay, there's your answer. As if she's trying to rescue the witness. Jackson is not having any of this either. You don't recall if they advised you of anything? Deva. No, because it wasn't. No, because is a deceptive marker. Jackson. As a trained law enforcement agent. Okay, so we've got the judge now saying, go ahead and ask a question, but both of you only one at a time, okay? Jackson, as a trained law enforcement officer, are you aware that it's a crime? It is like dragging blood out of a stone with this witness. As a trained law enforcement officer, are you aware that it's a crime to lie to certain other law enforcement agents? And she says, so she doesn't answer the question, deceptive marker. She gives a question / statement. When you have intent to lie, yes. Okay, so she's saying that her any lies that she's given she didn't intend to, and so therefore it's not a crime, it is. Okay, so you knew that when you spoke to these law enforcement officers, so you knew that when you spoke to these law enforcement officers, correct? Phew, yes. Okay, so this was almost as difficult as getting her to admit that she was looking at the monitors, that there are cameras, that there is a camera in the Sally Port, that she could see it, and it's taken him almost as long to get her to admit that the FBI did warn her that if you lie to us, it's a crime. Jackson, did you tell these law enforcement officers that you in fact saw Brian Higgins and Chief Burkowitz go into the Sally Port? Brennan, objection. With the SUV, may I finish my question? The judge, you can finish this question. It's okay, go ahead. Did you tell those law enforcement agents on August the 9th, 2023, that you saw Brian Higgins and Chief Burkowitz go into the Sally Port together and alone with the SUV for a wildly long time? And what does she say? Well, she doesn't answer the question with a yes and no, which would be her baseline. Instead, she says, so she at least owns it, that was my recollection at the time. So the answer is yes. Jackson wants to confirm this. So you did say that. She won't say yes. She says, at the time, that is what I recollected. Which is essentially yes, but she's terrified. She's being listened to. She's being watched by those who have threatened her. She's scared out of her wits. So so even though she's been absolutely cornered to tell the truth, skillfully by Jackson, because she's avoiding it at all costs, instead she says, at the time, that is what I recollected. Okay, let's go back to the video.
Understand my question?
Yes, I did. You threatened to charge me with perjury during our phone call prior to the first trial if I didn't lie on the stand right now. I'm telling you, I did not see anything. Factually, I've been provided evidence by a timeline that it is not correct.
Ms. Dever, my question was this. Were you advised that it was a crime to lie to those law enforcement agents? Yes or no?
No.
They never told you, they never admonished you that it would be a crime to lie to them?
Objection.
Sustained. As to form, Mr. Jackson.
Sure. Did they advise you of anything? Any consequences of lying to them?
So we had a willing conversation.
Yes or no?
I don't recall.
So, okay, there's your answer.
You don't recall if they advised you of anything?
No, because it
As
wasn't.
a trained law enforcement agent,
Go ahead and ask a question, but both of you only one at a time, okay?
as a trained law enforcement officer, are you aware that it's a crime to lie to certain other law enforcement agents?
When you have intent to lie, yes.
Okay. So you knew that when you spoke to these law enforcement officers, correct?
Yes.
Did you tell these law enforcement officers that you, in fact, saw Brian Higgins and Chief Burkowitz go into the Sally Port with the
Objection.
SUV? May I finish my question?
You can finish this question. Go ahead.
Did you tell those law enforcement agents on August 9th, 2023, that you saw Brian Higgins and Chief Burkowitz go into the Sally Port together and alone with the SUV for a wildly long time?
That was my recollection at the time.
So you did say that?
At the time, that is what I recollected.
Okay. You and I spoke along with Mr. Untitled and Ms. Little on a conference call last year sometime. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Between the time that you were interviewed on August 9th, 2023, and when we spoke sometime in maybe it was April or so of last year, does that sound about right?
Yes.
Did you have any conversation with any other party about your potential involvement in this case?
No.
Did you have a conversation with anybody in the commissioner's office at Boston Police Department?
Not about anything malicious.
I didn't use the word malicious. Why do you say malicious?
I had a conversation, but it was my department saying, regardless of what I need to say on the stand, they support me.
You were asked to go to the commissioner's office, correct?
Yes.
How long had you been on the Boston Police Department at the time that you were invited to go up to the Commissioner Michael Cox's office?
It had to have been before the first trial, so, and I know it was when the agency released information to outside people.
That's not my question.
Okay, so I don't recall.
Okay. You don't recall how long you had been on the force, generally, at the time that you were called up to the Commissioner's office, on the Boston Police Department?
No.
Was it 5 years, 2 years, 2 months? Give me a ballpark.
So I've been on the department for 2 years and 2 months. I would say somewhere in the range of a year.
Okay. Did you find it unusual for would you call yourself a rookie back then?
Yes.
Did you find it unusual that a rookie police officer would be called up to the commissioner's office personally to discuss a matter?
It was a reflection of how good of a leader he is. It was not anything that I found unusual, given the fact he is someone who wanted to show support for his officer.
So I'm guessing all of your training class or all of your entry classes at Boston PD, they've all gone up?
Okay, let's break down where we are. If you have time, you can pause the video and read all of this. Jackson says, you and I spoke along with Mr. Unetti and Miss Little on a conference call last year sometime. You remember that? Yes, back to baseline. Truthful. Between the time that you were interviewed on August the 9th, 2023, and when we spoke sometime in maybe it was April or so of last year, does that sound about right? Yes, back to baseline. Did you have any conversation with any other party about your potential involvement in this case? No, truthful. Back to baseline, possibly with Deva. Did you have a conversation with anybody in the Commissioner's office at Boston Police Department? Here we have what's on her mind, and she denies what's on her mind. So she says, not about anything malicious. I didn't use the word malicious. Why do you say the word malicious? She says, I had a conversation, but it was my department saying, so this is passive language, because the department can't speak. So I'm imagining then that my department saying, regardless of what I need to say on the stand, perhaps the truth, but instead, regardless of what I need to say on the stand, they support me. Again, passive voice, we don't know. She's avoiding. You were asked to go to the Commissioner's office, correct? Yes. Baseline truth. How long had you been on the Boston Police Department, etc.? She tries to change the question. Jackson catches it. That's not my question. She abandons the attempt to confuse the whole situation, complete abandonment, and goes back to another Uno card and says, well, in which case, I don't recall. Jackson, okay, you don't recall how long you've been on the force. He tries to pin her down. Was it 5 years, 2 years, etc.? Reason why? Eventually we get the answer of a year. Okay. Did you find it unusual? Would you call yourself a rookie? Yes. Baseline truth. Would you find, because it is unusual, isn't it? What rookie police officer gets called up personally to the Commissioner's office? Nobody, unless it's important. And instead, there's this story of the only reason that she's called up there is because he's a good leader. It was not anything that I found unusual. The unusual or the usual factor in reverse. Basically, with Deva, her linguistics have become Alice in Wonderland, where the opposite is true in an awful lot of what she says. It's the topsy-turvy world of Deva. It's only to show support for his officer. Well, why is that needed, this support? So obviously none of your training class are invited. You're the only one. She says, I don't know. You don't know. Brennan objects. The judge sustains it. Do you know any of your colleagues that have gone up to the Commissioner's office? Brennan's objecting again. Judge says that's sustained again. Now, when you went up to the Commissioner's office, did you respond? And she says it wasn't a direct line of contact from him. Okay, so vague. Doesn't say who. Again, it's passive language. Did you respond? Did you ultimately go? He's my boss, so yes. Okay, and who else was in that office? Me and him, the two of us. Deceptive. There's somebody else. General counsel for the Boston Police Department? No, it was just me and him. Let's play the tape.
The commissioner's office as well?
I don't know anyone else who's been in this particular circumstance.
Do you know anybody else who's been called up to the commissioner's office at your level at Boston Police Department?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you know of any of your colleagues with your level of experience that have been called up to the commissioner's office for a specific instance?
Objection.
That's sustained.
Now, when you went up to the commissioner's office, did you respond to his indication that he wanted to see you up in his office?
It wasn't a direct line of contact from him.
Okay. Did you respond? Did you ultimately go? That's what I mean by respond. Did you go to his office?
He's my boss, so yes.
Okay. And who else was in that office?
Me and him. The two of us.
General counsel for the Boston Police Department?
No, it's just me and him.
During the conversation that we had last year, did you say that general legal counsel for the Boston Police Department was also there?
Objection.
Not during that conversation.
Objection.
Next question.
Sure. Was there another time that you went to the commissioner's office where general legal counsel was there?
No.
Have you ever met general legal counsel for the Boston Police Department?
Yes.
Was it in the commissioner's office?
No.
When was it?
During my conversation with the agents.
You took a lawyer with you to talk to this other law enforcement agency?
I'm going to see a type out of this.
Okay, and look, the judge came to the rescue once more. And we've seen her do that with McCabe and others. Jackson has skillfully got to the situation where he's cornered Dever in a deception, and the judge comes to the rescue. The judge knows that she's under enormous amounts of pressure here and highly likely to tell the truth at this moment. But she's been told not to. She's been told not to tell the truth. Okay, let's see if there is... Brennan's worried about the truth coming out. The judge is worried about the truth coming out. Judge wants to get on... look at this. So we're seeing deceptive markers from the judge. Sure. Was there another time that you went to the commissioner's office where general legal counsel was there? You see, if it's all admitted that the commissioner didn't just randomly call up this rookie to his office because he's a good leader, but actually there's a lot more going on. You know, there's a dead police officer on another dead police officer's front lawn, for instance. And there's general counsel, then suddenly things are a little bit more complex, aren't they, rather? So, Dever says no. Jackson says, have you ever met general legal counsel from the Boston Police Department? Yes. So we get an admission. Was it in the commissioner's office? No. When was it? During my ownership of the conversation, during my conversation with the agents. So you took a lawyer with you to talk to this other law enforcement agency? Boom, judge stops it entirely. Which is good timing, actually, because that brings us to the end of today's analysis. Let's have a quick summary. She did observe something significant because we saw that huge 70-word catastrophic deception marker. She told federal agents what she saw, which was Higgins and Burkowitz with the vehicle. She had a long time to monitor External pressure has changed her testimony. Even the timeline at some point, she blamed, is responsible for changing her testimony. Someone showed her a timeline proving impossibility. So I think there's been some shenanigans with records at the police station to attempt to prove that what she saw she couldn't see. And she won't identify who's been mucking around with paperwork. The linguistic patterns, lots of passive voice. Yeah, this Alice in Wonderland logic. She is caught I do in some ways, although what she's done is awful. I think fear as a human motivator is extremely strong, and I think she's terrified, and I think she's been bullied, and I think she's been intimidated, and she could possibly be scared for her life. We're dealing with murders, and we're dealing with potential life imprisonment for those who are caught. She wouldn't be the first person to be removed as a witness with these sorts of stakes and the sort of powerful people who are involved at the top even. She's retired, so I wonder if the FBI will give her safe haven. She's been betrayed in many ways by the people who conned her into lying for them. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this analysis. Hopefully you'll have a chance to, in the comments, find some of the things which I've missed, spot some of the patterns, and I look forward to seeing you in those comments. Okay, have a good evening.